I'm just so happy to be here. Yo, last night, how great was that dinner? Amazing, right? And I was surrounded by Canadians the whole time. That never happens to me in Oxford. I've lived here off and on basically since 2016. And to have more Canadians here, I was just living my best life, you guys. So everyone else is like, that's not relevant to my life at all. And not relevant to this talk at all. I'm Alonzo. I'm that Canadian on the team. It is a pleasure to be with you. And this really is going to be setting up the whole day. So I'm not actually going to bring any resolutions to the problems that I'm going to outline here. The resolutions will come afterwards with Professor Lennox, who can do a lot better job than I can. And so that's my sort of little 60-second instruction at the beginning. So let's just dive right in. Every single day in 2024, Google will process 8.5 billion searches, and that amounts to just over 3 trillion searches by the end of the year. So why so much searching? Why do we do so much searching? So Aristotle, who you just seen, so if we can go to the next slide. Aristotle, that towering intellect from ancient Greece, he thinks it's this, because all people desire to know. And that picture is Japanese anime Aristotle. It's not an accurate portrayal of the real historical Aristotle. ChatGPT. Let's go. Okay, so we want to know. We search because by nature we are curious creatures. And amongst all of our searching, the search for knowledge is near the top. We have this desire that drives us to know the world around us, to know ourselves and to know the truth. But have you ever wondered what knowledge is precisely? And if you have, you've joined in some of the greatest minds throughout history. Next slide, please. Philosophers call this the study of epistemology. So it's a compound word. It comes from episteme, meaning knowledge, and logia, meaning the study of. So it's the study of knowledge. And many such philosophers defined knowledge as, amongst other things, justified true beliefs. So to justify a belief, sorry, this is going to be a little bit technical, but just keep with me here. To justify a belief, for it to count as knowledge, it has to be a belief that's supported by reason or reasons and evidence or evidences. But in addition to that, that justification requirement, it must correspond to reality. And it has to be logically coherent. That's what knowledge is. Now, knowledge is the focus of this lecture. And to be more precise, the focus of this lecture is 5 beliefs our culture has about knowledge. And I have a goal in mind here. My goal here is not, as I already alluded to present a bunch of solutions to the problems that I'm about to outline, but rather is to equip you with a map of the cultural terrain, the landscape in which we find ourselves. And we're going to explore and critically think through some of these things. Now, why should you care, you might be asking? And thank you so much for asking. I appreciate the participation. That was a joke. That didn't land. That's cool. It's all right. You should care, though, because there is a colossal problem going on in our culture at the moment. And the problem that we're facing on the next slide is this, that in our increasingly complex and technologically advanced world, it's becoming more difficult to distinguish between truth and falsehood, making the acquisition of genuine knowledge increasingly more difficult. I mean, think about it. Who can you trust these days? What can you trust these days? How can you trust the things that you trust these days? Truth is of supreme value. And by nature, we desire to know the truth. Much of the claims about truth are false or are just misleading. Therefore, the truth is more difficult to ascertain. That's the problem. And it isn't merely a problem out there. The challenge of distinguishing truth and falsehood is affecting all of our lives in greater degrees every single day. So think about it like this with me. Raise your hand if you've ever watched a Tom Cruise movie. I know we're getting deep, y'all. So on the next slide, you're going to see 3 clips. Let's see if they play. I would like you to identify which of these clips is the real Tom Cruise. Go ahead and play it.
Yeah. Yo, Tom, singing challenge. If I win, you gotta give me $10,000.
How do you get in my house?
You know, you're petty. I don't get why you're so jealous.
You know, you petty.
Oh, you lost. Come on, give me $10,000, Tom. Thank you for the money, man.
Honestly, it was worth it.
Oh, okay. Put me in the next movie.
So that's the first one. Maybe let's go to the next one.
You want me there, but easy come and easy go, and it wouldn't. So anytime I bleed, you let me go. Yeah, anytime I feel, you got me, no. Anytime I see, you let me know. But the plan and see, just let me go.
Okay, and the last one.
Just wanted to jump in and wish you luck. Congrats on the AFI awards. Congrats on life. Congrats on the look. Work on the humor a little bit. Thanks, Tom.
Raise your hand if you think you know who the real Tom Cruise is out of those 3 videos. Not too many. Okay, don't all of you, participate at once, eh? Kevin, go for it. Number 3? Okay, that's a good guess. Maybe lots of us thought number 3. The truth is none of them are the real Tom Cruise. These are all deepfakes. And so they are AI-generated digital content hyper-realistically simulating real life. And they're everywhere. Certainly, the ubiquity of deepfakes, say with celebrities like this, that's deeply troubling. But that is far from the worst part of it. Deepfakes have already been made of Donald Trump, Barack Obama, Mark Zuckerberg, and a score of other influential figures. Now, the tech is a bit unpolished, so it's relatively easy to identify some deepfake video that's out there. But what happens when the inevitable happens, when they perfect deepfake technology? So we've already witnessed actors and actresses in Hollywood protesting last year. Some of you guys followed that story. They were concerned that they would be put out of jobs because studios could digitally render, they could deepfake these actors and actresses so they could map their voices or map their image into their movie. They don't need them anymore. You get scanned, and then you're in my movie. Now I own you. And that's why there was a lot of protests earlier this year and last year. Now, I still think that's still just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to deepfake technology. 2024 is critically important for what? Elections. There's going to be over 2 billion people voting this year. And so what does this sort of technology mean with respect to elections? We have no idea, but it is a serious potential for chaos. What happens when a deep fake video of a world leader from country X creates a video and claims that country X is going to nuke country Y tomorrow at 8 a.m. And it's believed by millions and millions of people before country X has time to correct it? It seems to me that deepfake technology has the potential of being a weapon of mass chaos. And an enormous concern here, rightly so, raised by Glamour magazine this year was, quote, deepfake technology is a threat to all women, not just celebrities. So many people have in mind here the horrifying reality of non-consensual sexual exploitation. Nowadays, you, your spouse, your children can be deep-faked and posted online to satisfy some sinister appetite. In June 2024, an article from The Independent written by Martha McHardy, she writes this, quote, non-consensual sexual exploitation videos that swap a person's face into a pornographic video are one of the most prevalent forms of deepfakes, end quote. This is serious. The critical point here with respect to knowledge is that the line between knowing what is true and real and what's not true and not real is increasingly blurring. Raise your hand if you remember Pizzagate. Pizzagate. 3 of us. Okay, that's cool. In 2016, so during the US presidential election, it was claimed that a high-ranking Democratic officials were involved in a child trafficking ring operating out of a pizzeria called Comet Ping Pong in Washington, D.C. Maybe the pictures will jar your memory. This story went viral, and sadly, there was a man that believed the story to be true, and he went to this store, he had a gun, and put a lot of people in danger because he believed that kids were actually being trafficked in this store. Now, the deeply disturbing reality of that story was that it was completely false. It wasn't a justified true belief. And people were in serious danger because somebody believed, as a matter of fact, something to be true, and it turned out to be false. Deepfakes are affecting our lives in greater and greater degrees every single day. So too is the misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation that can be generated by this technology. So who knows what future chaos will be unleashed as a result of it? And the critical point in this discussion at this juncture is that never before in human history has it been so easy to spread falsehood. And with such examples in mind, it's of the utmost importance that we strive towards understanding what our culture believes about knowledge. So let us continue mapping the terrain. And for those of you that like a good roadmap, here's it on the next slide. This is what we're going to be thinking about. Number 1 will be a taxonomy of the 5 beliefs our culture has about knowledge, and then number 2, some meditations on what we just covered. And again, Professor John Lennox is going to provide the solution. I'm just going to be identifying problems. Okay, let's dive in. So in my introduction, we covered that knowledge is largely justified true beliefs. And my hope with those 2 examples of deepfakes and Pizzagate is to hopefully establish that the problem that I presented supports the formally stated problem of that truth is of supreme value. By nature, we desire to know the truth. Number 3, much of the claims about truth and falsehood are false or misleading. And number 4, that the truth is more difficult to ascertain. So despair not, however, we can identify knowledge in our culture. We can identify the truth, and we have the ability to discern quite a bit of it. For example, you can know what an apple tastes like by tasting it. You can know how big Mount Everest is by relying on a credible source to tell you how tall Mount Everest is. You can know, without seeing every triangle in the universe, that all triangles are 3-sided just by thinking about the concept of triangleness, if that's a word. You can also know that pineapples don't belong on pizza because they violate natural law by thinking what it means. Thank you for the head nod. I appreciate that. Polarizing. We inherited a lot of this understanding, so this will be a little history lesson here. We inherited a lot of this understanding about knowledge from the great thinkers of the past. To name a few of them, we have Plato and Aristotle in ancient Greece. We have Augustine and Thomas Aquinas in the patristic period, that's the early church father period, and the medieval period. To eras like the Enlightenment with René Descartes, John Locke, David Hume, and Immanuel Kant. And while these thinkers laid the foundation of knowledge as we understand it, our world presents new challenges to us when we're thinking about knowledge, as we're questing for truth. And these challenges are what I have in mind when I stated at the very beginning that the truth is difficult right now to ascertain. And more precisely, some of the challenges are, number 1, the reality that we inhabit is inherently complex. And the more we understand about it, the more complex we realize it is. Number 2 is this: nowadays, New ways of thinking are challenging past methods of acquiring knowledge and cast doubt on widely accepted concepts like meta-narratives. Raise your hand if you've heard of meta-narratives before. There we go. These are grand stories that make sense of our lives and our reality. And number 3, the technological advancement has warranted our skepticism about information that we encounter. Our technological heavy and technologically dependent age has only exacerbated the complexity in which we find ourselves. Things are just moving so fast, aren't they? Not all of it's bad, but it can definitely feel overwhelming. And some of it's regressing. Like last night, a digital camera came out, and it was funny to me. Maybe not to you guys. Anyways, the jokes aren't landing. Is it hot in here? Is that just me? Now, that list, those 3 points, that's not an exhaustive list by any stretch. But I think they represent some of the more pressing challenges that we have right now. And so I suspect that all of us, as you listen to something like that, we think again, who can we trust? What can we trust? How can we trust the things that we trust? And these new ways of thinking are most relevant to this lecture's theme, so I'm going to hyper-focus on there. And it's important to recognize that these new perspectives aren't just abstract philosophical ideas. They actively are competing for your allegiance. They're being communicated through various media channels, whether it's film, TV, books, social media influencers, and more. And each of these voices are vying for us to see the world as they see it, to understand ourselves as they understand themselves, and to adopt their definition of the times that we live in. And this competition of ideas brings us naturally to the major section of this lecture, which is a taxonomy of 5 of the more pervasive beliefs about knowledge that we have in our culture. And by examining them, I hope we get a better understanding of the landscape in which we inhabit in our contemporary world. Now, if you haven't heard these terms before, doesn't mean that you don't believe them. You can be influenced greatly by these ideas, even though you don't have the language to identify it. The taxonomy that we're going to cover, the 5 beliefs that we're going to cover is this. Number 1 is the information age. Number 2 is the age of big data. Number 3 is the 4th industrial revolution, also called IRL, or 4IR, or Industry 4.0, same thing. Number 4 is post-truth era, and number 5 is metamodernism. Let's continue diving in. So defining the information age. So this era is marked by the rapid shift from traditional industry to an economy that's largely based on information technology. So think about how you consume news and information. When's the last time you bought a physical newspaper? Unless you're Max Jaganathan. Okay, and we got 2 or 3 of them, yeah. Right? Not very much. For many of us, it's smartphones, it's computers, it's asking Alexa. All of those have become the primary window into the world. In fact, in 2021, Pew Research Center did a study, and they discovered that 48% of U.S. adults get their information, their news from often or sometimes from social media, from digital devices of some nature. And that's nearly half the percentage of the US, and that's only increasing. You could think back to June 27th, the US presidential debate, which was great to watch, between Biden and Trump. Millions watched it live, of course, but millions more went the next day or later on after the debate was over to find out online some clips or what their favorite commentator has said about it. So we're not just consuming high-volume, raw information at an extraordinary rate, but we're also increasingly relying on others to interpret it for us. And how did we arrive at this stage? Well, we saw there's 3. We saw the development of personal computers and the internet, which democratized access to information. Number 2 is this. Then we come to the rise of tech giants like Google, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, OpenAI, and so on. And these companies have now become the new gatekeepers for information. And number 3 is this. We've witnessed a massive shift from traditional media to digital platforms, fundamentally changing how information is produced and consumed. Now, the implication for knowledge here is this. 3 things. Number 1, the sheer volume of information at our fingertips, let's be honest, is overwhelming. You have the entirety of human knowledge in your back pocket. That's wild. We can find information on virtually any issue that you want in just a few clicks. But this overload makes distinguishing truth from falsehood many times more difficult. Number 2, on one hand, we have adapted, I think, to this overload by outsourcing our critical thinking. We're increasingly depending on others to do our critical thinking for us. This erodes our critical thinking skills themselves as we rely more and more on our preferred commentators. And on the other hand, our skepticism towards traditional institutions in their ability to relay credible information has only pushed us to alternatives, and hence the rise of conspiracy theories and alternative news outlets. And finally, number 3 is all this leads to the problem, I think, of algorithmic confirmation bias. So in our pursuit of genuine knowledge, we consistently engage with certain types of content. The algorithms will learn and reinforce our pre-existing beliefs that we've went and sought out by prioritizing similar content that we've engaged with and liked. This means that our viewpoints are minimizing, and we're getting less and less of the full picture. Now, remember when we used to say in jest, it's true, I read about it on the internet. You remember that? Like, maybe I'm dating myself. That's like early 2000s, you know? But it's like, well, how much of that is a reality now, though? Like, yeah, I went and seen what people were saying on Reddit. Or yeah, like I read the Wikipedia page or whatever. Like, we used to jest about that, but it's becoming more and more a way of shaping our thinking and acquiring new knowledge. Number 2 is this, the age of big data. On the next slide, the age of big data. So when people are thinking about this, the age of big data, they mean the time when vast amounts of data are being generated every single day, every single second. Generated, collected, and analyzed to inform decision-making in various fields. So consider the example that all of us use on a weekly basis, my wife on a daily basis, Amazon shopping, okay? Just kidding. I probably shop just as much on Amazon as my wife does. Amazon's product recommendation system analyzes billions of data points from your user browser history to your purchase history to websites that you're on, that you click on, and so on, to suggest personalized product recommendations. And the system is so sophisticated that it can predict what you want before you sort of actualize what you want. You know, it can make these suggestions where you're like, yo, actually, yeah, I could go for one of those, or whatever. So how did we arrive here? It emerged from several key developments. Number 1 is this. The exponential growth in computing power and data generation, as well as the Internet of Things. So every smart device, from our phone to our refrigerator, is now a potential data collection point, including our Fitbits and all of that sort of thing. Number 2 is this, the advancement in data storage and processing capacities. So the development of cloud computing and improvement in hardware have made it possible to store and analyze vast amounts of data quickly and cheaply. Things that used to cost millions are pennies on the dollar now. Things that would be inconceivable to store with respect to its vastness are very, very easy to store now. And the development of sophisticated algorithms and machine learning techniques to analyze all of this data is only increasing as well. And the tools can identify patterns and correlations that would just be impossible for marketing human experts to identify and make correlations about. Implications for knowledge. There are two that I want to present to you here. In our culture today, data has become a commodity. This is a serious point. Data has become a commodity. The sheer volume of data being collected about you and I, online and offline, is staggering. And the reason is simple. Every click, every purchase, every location check-in becomes a data point to be harvested, to be sold to marketing firms, analyzed, and turned to turn a profit. Now, let's be clear. This is the serious bit. The commodification of data is the commodification of humans. Suppose I'm Amazon, and you're a consumer. Company X selling product Y wants you, the consumer, to buy their product. So Amazon turns a profit by selling them your attention based on your data through targeted ads and so on and so forth. You are the commodity in that transaction between Amazon and the company. Last point is this on this section. The commodification phenomenon affects our understanding of truth, understanding of knowledge, as information is increasingly manipulated and tailored for commercial gain rather than objective insight. Fourth, and probably the most rad, is the fourth industrial revolution. This is also called, as I said before, Industry 4.0. And it's a phrase used to describe a period characterized by the fusion of technology that is blurring the lines between the physical, the biological, and the digital. So for instance, consider the development of brain-computing interfaces, allowing direct communication between human brains and external devices. In fact, technology like this already exists and is already being tried out. So consider, for example, the case of Nolan Arbo. He is a quadriplegic, he's a Christian, as a matter of fact, who recently received Neuralink, an implant, and it's this brain-computer interface designed to enhance cognitive faculties and to facilitate communication between his brain and the devices in front of him. When Nolan was asked about how it performs in something mundane like playing video games, he said that the advantage in playing video games with this implant is so great that video games, which now have video game leagues of competitive professional video gamers, the advantage is so great that the video game, companies will have to make their own leagues for people with this sort of enhancement, because he can react in the video game quicker than he can consciously know that he's reacting. His brain is acting quickly. The technology is getting close to catching up to how fast the brain is going, but his conscious reflexes aren't fast enough to keep up what's going on with the brain and the technology. Very interesting. So what once felt like pure science fiction is becoming a reality. As our understanding of biology deepens, as our computer power continues to grow exponentially, and our engineering advances allow for the development of nanoscale technology, like nanobots and so on, the fusion of technology and the digital worlds on a large scale is no longer a what if, but a when. As futurist and author Ray Kurzweil famously remarks, the singularity, this fusion and the exponential growth of technology, the singularity is nearer, moving us closer and closer to what Nick Bostrom calls, he's an author, an analytic philosopher, and so on, what he calls deep utopia. Deep utopia is this ideal state of existence that goes beyond superficial improvements to human life. In deep utopia, there's a fundamental transformation of human physiology. We solve all of these problems that we have. And this idyllic state involves the fulfillment of basic needs, the alleviation of suffering whatsoever, like scarcity, climate change, and so on, as well as the enhancement of human intelligence and experience. Some people, like Ray Kurzweil, suggest, he's done this since the 90s, that human intelligence will improve 1,000,000-fold by the year 2045. He thinks we're going to reach the singularity point in 2029, and if you think it's growing and changing quickly now, in 2029, 5 years' time, it will be the likes that you've never seen before. We barely can fathom what our world is going to look like 10 years from now. It's going to be something else. So how do we arrive at this point? Industry 4.0 represents the culmination of rapid technological advancement throughout the 20th century, building on the digital revolution initiated by the third industrial revolution, which is often marked by the advent of the smartphone in 2007, which I got a smartphone back in 2007, and I feel like a bit of an old person when I'm like, oh man. Anyways, I'm digressing. Okay, so who are the key contributors? I'm just going to race through this. Klaus Schwab, Ray Kurzweil, Nick Bostrom, Mustafa Solomon. I'm going to race through, though. What's the implication for our knowledge here? Let's think about what this means. Thinkers like Yuval Noah Harari, that famous author of *Sapiens* and many other books, argues fervently that we have no idea what this means. That we are not taking serious enough the ramifications of this accelerated digital advancement. And he gets that from studying human history. Because often, when we're talking about this optimistic utopia, digital utopia, what's missing out of their calculus is human nature. Now, he would say something like, we have this pattern, this behavior of acting poorly, and others would corroborate that. But from a Christian perspective, let's say, the criticism would be, the critique would be, that you're not taking into your calculus the doctrine of sin. And that this can be used not only for great good, like medicine advancement, but can also be used for great evil. Next, the revolution challenges our understanding of what constitutes reality and truth. The boundaries between physical, digital, biological worlds, they just blur, and it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish between what is real and what's artificial. And moreover, the integration of AI with human cognition raises profound questions about the nature of knowledge itself. If machines can process and analyze information far more efficiently than human beings, does this diminish the value of human knowledge and expertise? And if so, to what extent? Will we increasingly rely on AI systems to generate and interpret information for us? Or will it be a premium on human intelligence that weighs in on a particular matter? We just don't know. My last little implication for this section is this, that the Industry 4.0 challenges our understanding of human identity and agency. If our cognitive functions can be enhanced and augmented by technology, at what point do we cease being fully human? How do we maintain our sense of autonomy, of free will, in a world where our thoughts and actions may be influenced so heavily by AI? If we do really fuse, and our intelligence is at least increased by 1,000,000-fold, some people will say many millions of folds, what does that mean? Are you making the decision? Next is post-truth era. This is the time where objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion, personal beliefs, and concepts like my truth and my authentic self. So, for instance, you can consider the rise of transgenderism and its challenge to evidence-based understanding of biological sex and gender. This debate exemplifies how emotional appeals and personal beliefs can sometimes overshadow scientific consensus. And here, values like authenticity reign supreme. Now, I'm going to, if you want to talk about this more, post-truth era, come and find me afterwards. I just got the indicator that we're running short on time. So I'm going to skip real quick to the definition of metamodernism, and then I'm going to give you my one reflection for the problems. So just to summarize post-truth era, this is where we were seeing this subjective, this matter of opinion starting to take precedent or reigning supreme over the objective, the matter of fact. Metamodernism is distinct and new. And this is a cultural philosophy that seeks to transcend or reconcile the divide between modernism and postmodernism. So the big idea here is this. Modernism really did seek after objective, universal truth. Whereas postmodernism really challenged that, the idea of meta-narratives, the idea of universal truth and objective truth. But metamodernism recognizes the complexity of reality and says to us, hey, maybe there's a third way. Maybe there's a way of reconciling both of these views to get a fuller picture of our reality. It's far more nuanced than either one that wants to bifurcate our reality. So that's metamodernism, and it's very emblematic of a lot of Gen Z, Gen Alpha thinking. So you're going to see that become more and more popular. Final meditation is this. As we reflect on these cultural beliefs, the information age, the age of big data, the fourth industrial revolution, the post-truth era, and metamodernism, we can see how deeply interconnected they are. The information age gave rise to big data, which in turn fuels the fourth industrial revolution. These technologies and philosophical reflections on the world contribute to the post-truth era, whilst metamodernism attempts to reconcile all of this rapid change. As we grapple with these perennial questions about knowledge, perhaps our culture would be wiser to heed the lesson learned, or rather missed, by Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea during the time of Jesus. Remember, we began this lecture with Aristotle's famous quote, "All people desire to know." 3 trillion Google searches a year. Well, during Jesus' interrogation, Pilate asks, "What is truth?" And before Jesus responds, Pilate walks away. That was a mistake. And that is a mistake that many are in danger of in our time right now, in our chaotic time right now. For, behold, hidden in plain sight, in that episode, stood one who claimed to be truth itself. I close with the immortal words said by the one who claimed to be truth, Jesus Christ, who said this: "In fact, the reason I was born and came into the world is to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." Thank you so much, you guys.
Hey guys, how you doing? It's me, Tom Cousins. It's the OCCA studio. I'm actually part of an organisation called OCCA, the Oxford Centre for Christian Apologetics. We make films about the big questions of life and how the Christian message has valuable, we think, answers to those questions. If you enjoyed this film, please check out the other stuff on our channel and also consider liking and subscribing. It helps us make more stuff like this. Also, we want to hear your thoughts. If you've got any ideas for future content, please drop us a message in the comments or send us a direct email. Thanks go out to all the people that made this possible, including the lovely people behind me. Here's a fun fact for you. It takes about 60 hours to make each one of these films, and it's all made by our in-house OCCA staff who are funded by donations. So if you do have the means and you feel like it, please do donate. On our website, we've got a helpful button labeled donate, very easy to press. All right, God bless you guys. Bye.